Now, Nigel Farage has announced that if Labour refuse to hold an inquiry into grooming gangs, Reform UK will commit to legislation in their manifesto at the next election. Politicians across the party divide have also backed demands for a parliamentary bill investigating child abuse gangs, including top Labour peer Maurice Glasman. Let's remind ourselves of what Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips had to say in the Commons yesterday.
I know exactly the issue of the cover-up, as does everybody already, because of the many local inquiries that have told us that this happened and the national inquiry that has told us that there were cover-ups. What we must focus on is making sure, like happened in Telford, that there is a local process of accountability that actually changes things on the ground, and that is what I will do. I have been trying to change the issue of this on the ground for all of my life.
She's obviously got herself into a bit of a sticky position there, because it's quite obvious what she should be doing, having a national inquiry. Even Oldham Council have asked for a national inquiry so that we can all look at absolutely everything. Charlie Peters, our brilliant reporter, did find that there are potentially 50 locations where this is happening. So it is a national problem. Charlie Peters joins me now alongside Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. Right, thank you, lads, for joining me. Charlie, what more can you tell us about all of this?
Well, Jess Phillips has met with plenty of survivors and campaigners over the years, and indeed since January, when we broke that news, as you just reminded our viewers and listeners, that she had rejected a request from Oldham Council for a government-led inquiry. Also revealed last week that she had refused to meet with Oldham Council in December, and then in January, when she was asked if she was going to meet survivors or had met any, she said she was doing all she could to do that. So there has been a lot of pressure on the government on this issue since January, and this morning that pressure increased when a Labour peer, Maurice Glasman, came out with support with Reform UK and several Tory frontbenchers to say that they were going to be putting forward this bill by a campaign group called Crush Crime. This is what they describe as a ready-to-go bill that would call for a statutory national inquiry into this issue. Its director, Lawrence Newport, told GB News this morning that this crisis had been going on for decades and there had yet to be a proper initiative to tackle it. He thinks this bill would make that effort. And then, at the beginning of this afternoon, we were able to reveal that Nigel Farage has made his first legislative manifesto commitment as part of the march towards the next general election, which is to have a statutory national inquiry launched within 1 month of a reform government. Now, we've reached out to the other political parties, and we have had a spokesman for King Badenoch saying that the Conservatives are leading on this issue. They have already forced a vote on this issue, and it's too important to wait until the next general election to do that, and they're going to force another vote through the crime bill. The government, they have recommitted to those 5 local inquiries. There was an accusation from the Tories earlier this month that they'd watered them down. They're now saying there could be even more than 5. But the question remains, Nana, where are those other local inquiries going to be? So far, we only know about Oldham. And we revealed on this channel earlier this month that a former police officer based in Bradford had serious concerns, and he was threatened with arrest when he raised these concerns in the local area. Bradford, for example, is not committing to one of these local inquiries. So if they won't do it, and the local inquiries, the local councils don't want to hold them, perhaps it can only fall to a national body to force them through.
This video is sponsored by Saily. Saily is a brand new eSIM service app. What it does is get you a local SIM card that you can use when you're travelling, so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a text back home. They've got eSIM plans in over 160 countries and 8 regions, so pretty much wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? Well, all you've got to do is hit our link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan, you can choose the best time frame for you, and then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. Saily eSIMs only ever have to be installed once, so when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and just like that, you could be watching the GB News YouTube channel. You can be connected anywhere you go, and you don't have to deal with patchy Wi-Fi in your hotels. So get sorted for your next trip by downloading Saily using the link in the description below, and if you use our code NEWS at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us.
All right, Chris, why do you think that Jess Phillips is holding on to this stance of not wanting a national inquiry, seeing as it is quite obvious this is a national scandal?
Yeah, it is completely obvious, and we in the Conservatives have been arguing on this point for some months now. We put it to a vote back in, I think, February, and we're going to force it to another vote in a few weeks' time on the floor of the Commons, when every single Labour MP is going to have to decide whose side they are on. Look, we need a national statutory inquiry to get under these cover-ups for a few reasons, and we saw the evidence that Charlie uncovered via that police officer that, the police were instructed to cover this up years ago. Now, not a single person, not even one, has been held to account for covering up these appalling crimes. And let's not forget, they were instructed to cover this up because the perpetrators were mainly of Pakistani origin or descent, and local councils and local police forces didn't want to, quote, inflame community tension. That is a despicable reason for covering up the rape of young girls. Now, we need a national statutory inquiry for two reasons. First of all, these 5 local inquiries, totally inadequate. As Charlie has uncovered, there are at least 50 towns where this happened. Some of those towns, Bradford being a prime example, is refusing to cooperate with a local inquiry. So Bradford's not going to get investigated at all as matters stand. Now, why does it need to be statutory? That means the inquiry has legal powers under the Inquiries Act 2005 to compel witnesses to attend, to requisition evidence, to take evidence under oath. Now, you need to do that to get to the truth, because even as recently as last year, in Manchester, where there was a local inquiry, the chairs of that inquiry, the two of them, they resigned because even as recently as last year, public bodies were still covering things up, and the inquiry needs those legal powers. That's why we're calling for this. To answer your question, I have no idea what on earth Jess Phillips is thinking. I mean, she was looking in Parliament yesterday. I was sitting opposite her, as your clip showed. She didn't have good answers to these questions. She couldn't answer the 2 points that I just made a moment ago. Labour backbenchers are getting increasingly frustrated. You got people like Harriet Harman. You got Labour Mayor Andy Burnham. You got Sarah Champion, the Labour MP for Rochdale. Dan Carden, a Labour MP for Liverpool, and now Lord Glassman, all coming out backing the call for a national inquiry. They're going to have to change their mind, and this vote we're going to bring forward again in just a few weeks' time is our opportunity to force the Labour government to do that.
Some people that might say, and I respect what you're saying, I totally agree with you. I don't know why Jess Phillips is holding back, and I think this is it crosses all parties. It's not a party-specific thing, but your party were in power during all of this going on, and some people might hear you and say, yes, we agree with you, but why didn't you do something when it was happening under your watch? Well,
the last government did a lot. They commissioned the original J inquiry. The last government commissioned the ICSA inquiry, which partly looked at this, but it didn't go anything like far enough. Sajid Javid commissioned the collection of data on ethnicity, which supported the conclusion that the majority of perpetrators, in fact, the vast majority, were of Pakistani origin. Until a few months ago, it was considered somehow racist to say that, but I'm afraid it's just a fact. And we also set up the Grooming Gangs Task Force, which arrested 550 people. But I'm going to be honest, those things were not enough. Totally we need to go further. We do.
Chris, we've heard from the government when we've asked them to respond to new announcements being made by the Conservatives on this. They've described you and other shadow ministers as shameless, saying that you didn't do enough on this during those 14 years and now you're just jumping on a bandwagon. Do you accept at least that there has been a period of learning for the Conservative Party, and that actually in a lot of these key constituencies where this is happening, you just weren't looking into it really? One of your shadow ministers, Robbie Moore up in Bradford, he has been campaigning for a Rotherham-style inquiry into that district for years, but I can't remember him ever getting serious support, even when you were in power.
Well, I just set out a moment ago the things that the last government did: the ICSA inquiry, the Rochdale inquiry, the Grooming Gangs Task Force, the collection of ethnicity data. All of those were things the last government did. But as I said a second ago, I'm going to be honest, those were not enough. We need to go further. Now we have further evidence, including actually the evidence you uncovered just a few weeks ago from that police officer, John Pecos. We now have much clearer evidence about the cover-up. And what worries me is partly that these perpetrators have not all been caught, but also not a single person, not one, who covered this up. People in positions of authority, senior police officers, council leaders. We even had Simon Danchuk, the former Labour MP, saying that the then chair of the Parliamentary Labour Party told him to keep quiet about this. No one has been held to account for those cover-ups. And there's a criminal offence. It's called misconduct in public office. And these people, like that chief superintendent that John told us about, they frankly, in my view, should be prosecuted for misconduct in public office. Not a single person has been. And that is why we need this inquiry to get to the bottom of it.
Do you think that Jess Phillips is on slightly borrowed time if she doesn't capitulate and get on with actually agreeing to a national inquiry?
Well, I think there's overwhelming opinion now, like Labour MPs coming out and supporting a national inquiry. Now Labour peers, the opinion polling shows the public are in favour of it. I think, unless the government, Yvette Cooper and Jess Phillips, change their position on this, their own positions will become increasingly untenable.
Just quickly, Chris, I mean, the Tories have said quite a lot under Kemi Badenoch's leadership that there's no point in making these policy announcements because you're still building back trust. This is a very sensitive issue, which requires a lot of trust to gain public support on. Do you think that you're pushing a bit far on this one, considering you're still going through that process of bringing back public trust? And as you said, you didn't go far enough when you were in power. Do you think that the public can trust the Conservatives when they look at this issue?
Well, look, my job as Shadow Home Secretary today is to stand up for the public, to stand up for the victims and to make sure the truth comes out. We see this issue in front of us now. We've got the testimony. We've recently seen from people like John Peacos. We've seen the Oldham call for an inquiry, which only came out a few months ago. My job is to work on issues that are before us right now, and where there is a need to act immediately, I will do that, and we're going to force votes in Parliament. We can't afford to wait months or years to take action on this. The time for action is now, and that is why we're going to be forcing another vote in Parliament. Every single MP is going to have to vote on this. It'll be specifically on a national inquiry on the rape gangs. It won't get mixed up with any other issues. And every single MP, including every single Labour MP, is going to have to decide whose side they really on.
It will be interesting to see whether they're prepared to be honest about the situation, because we'd like them to be. And we also don't want it to drag on, because it drags on, and then we have one inquiry after another, and you listed a load, nothing happened about them, you just did them. So we will hope that the Conservatives will hold Labour to account and make sure that it's timely as well, and hopefully that we will get to the bottom of that. But whilst I've got you here, I want to talk to you about migration, because obviously we've reached the 10,000 mark. What would you suggest to the Labour government now to try and fix the situation? Because, of course, smashing the gangs is clearly not working.
Yeah, that claim is in absolute tatters. This has been the worst year on record so far, 2025. More people have come over illegally than any year in history, and the numbers since the election are up about 35%. Absolutely disgraceful. We had been getting them down in 2023. Now they're going through the roof. Look, there is a simple solution to this. Look, if an illegal immigrant is in France and they're thinking of coming to the UK on a dinghy, if they know... Or a kayak, or any means, frankly. If they know they are going to get rapidly sent somewhere else, outside Europe, for example, Rwanda, then they're not going to bother crossing. It stands to reason. Australia did something similar about 10 years ago, which worked. So if the Labour government was serious about stopping this, they would immediately start the Rwanda deterrent. Now, it was due to start. The first plane was due to take off at the end of July, but they cancelled it before it started. And this is the result we've seen. They need to urgently get that Rwanda scheme back up and running, send these people straight to Rwanda as soon as they arrive in Dover, and within a matter of weeks, they will simply stop coming, because nobody wants to swap, France for Rwanda. That would stop it, but they cancelled it. And they're about, even worse than that, they're about to repeal our legislation, which provided the legal basis for the Rwanda scheme. So even if in 6 months' time, or 12 months' time, they come to their senses and change their mind, they'll have repealed the law which they needed. It's shocking dereliction of duty by this government. There is a solution. We've seen it work in Australia. They should implement it.
Well, if only they would, but I'm afraid that ship has sailed. Pardon the pun. Chris Philp, Charlie Feeters, thank you very much.